Mike Vanderjagt here to talk some football. Mike, how you doing?
I'm great. How are you?
I'm good. Appreciate you being here
Boy.
tonight. Of course, Mike is the most accurate kicker in the NFL of all time until somebody retires. Namely, there's a few guys out there that could take your spot.
As much as I kibosh them every Sunday, they keep making them. So I guess
they keep making them. They're pretty good. You were pretty good too.
They're
we talked a
couple
weeks ago on Golden Blue Dude's channel, and it was fun because we get started talking about NFL history, and I can get after that for sure. So appreciate you being here.
No problem.
And West Virginia. So my audience, mostly college football fans. Of course, there's a crossover there, a lot of NFL fans, but we'll start with West Virginia. How much do you continue to keep up with West Virginia football?
More recently than I had in the past. I certainly, when I was playing, it's like the family at the U, right? Everybody from the U are always going to be tied together. Same thing with West Virginia. So teammates, guys we're playing against. If you knew they were from West Virginia, certainly you would go and interact with them a little bit. But I just bought a house in upstate New York in August, so I'm now kind of 6 months on the East Coast. So I got to go to 2 West Virginia games last year, which was really the first time I had been back to Morgantown in, decades, unfortunately. So I fell in love with it again, and I've already got my Pitt, West Virginia tickets for this fall and planned on spending a lot more time in Morgantown than I have in the past, that's for sure.
Do you keep track of all these changes going on in college football? Conference expansion, all that business?
What I'm sure you've talked about it. The USC UCLA thing is just unbelievable to me. I don't. Can you explain it to me? I'm sure you've already probably beat it like a dead horse. But
we're gonna do it some more because people can't get enough of it. It's all about money, of course. That's what it comes down to is money, and the Big Ten can go out and grab the LA market, and they can offer USC and UCLA so much more TV revenue than the Pac-12 can, and that's pretty much what it comes down to.
Is it really going to come down to 2 power conferences, and that's the extent of it, similar to AFC, NFC? It's just going to be the Big Ten and the SEC? Is that where this is headed?
I hope not. I don't want it headed that way, but even before all this started, those were the 2 that owned the sport, made the most money, most rear ends in the seats. And now with the additions here in the last year, that only widens the gap and now gives them more leverage to sweeten the pot for other teams to jump on.
It's unbelievable. I mean, the NIL and the transfer portal has been a disaster for college sports, and now to me, it just keeps getting worse, not better. I mean, I guess money talks, and it's NIL is money, the power conferences is money, TV deals is money, and money is the root of all evil, right?
Yeah, it is. If you love it too much, it's a commodity. like a lot of people say, it's an amplifier. If you're going to do some good with it, that's awesome, man. The more money you got, the more good you can do with it. But if you're going to it's gonna get into some people's heads, which I can imagine being in NFL locker rooms for more than a decade for you. Guys can obviously handle it because if you look at any NFL roster and if you look at the salary list, there's always guys that are better than other guys, not making as much money as the other guy because of circumstances and the way things play out, and guys get better, guys decline, and in the middle of contracts. So did you ever see or get the feeling that was a problem?
Yeah. I mean, a quick story is I was driving home from a talk show with Rob Zamner. So Rob Zamner is an NHL player in Canada, and he played in the NHL a long time. And I was just finishing up in Toronto, and I was heading down to Indianapolis for training camp. And I was elated, right? I was like, oh my God, I've just tripled my salary. I've gone from, $50,000 in the CFL to, 150 in the NFL as a rookie. And I was like, I'll play for rookie minimum the entire time. I don't care. And Rob's like, that'll change. I was like, no way. And then when you get into the NFL and you realize you're good, and then you look around at other kickers who are making $1 million, and then your mentality changes, right? It's just like, well, if they're making $1 million and I'm this good, I want $1 million. So, it does drive you, and you do look around in the locker room and see this guy's making, 400 and this guy's making 14 million. You definitely sizing guys up based on their contracts, and it's really sad because that really shouldn't be the way the world is. But if you're in it for such a short amount of time, the theory is you got to get what you can get while you can get it, right?
Absolutely. Yeah, I don't fault anybody in this. And keeping it with the college game, the idea of NIL makes complete sense to me, because we got 14 and 15-year-old kids running on TikTok and Instagram, making a fortune, making stupid music videos. So why can't a college athlete, while the university's making a ton of money on their jersey, why can't they make money based on their celebrity as well? So it all sounds good, and I'm all for it individually, but when you throw it all together and just throw it out there with no guidelines, regulations, keeping this thing on course, then it becomes a mess.
What's crazy is that when this first went down and everybody pre-NIL, and everybody was talking about, players, college kids should get paid. They should get paid. Oh my God, how are they not getting? And I always looked at it. I was like, well, they are getting paid. I mean, if you're standing there on scholarship and the kid next to you is not on scholarship, you're making 40 or 50 grand a year just because you don't have to pay for your education. And so to me, I was kind of always on the other side of it going, listen, you're getting $250,000 worth of schooling for free, so I wouldn't complain. So, and then now, and you're right, the NIL is one thing, but to just let it be absolute chaos is not good, and as I think we even talked about it on the Gold and Blue Dude the other day, is that now your alumni are controlling your football program. I mean, even the who was it, Charlie Batch, that offered $1 million to go to Eastern Michigan for Caleb Williams for a year or something like that. Was that the story?
Did he really? I didn't hear that.
No, I
Charlie Batch, huh? Wow.
Was it Charlie Batch? I don't know.
That would make sense. That's where he went to school. Yeah. He went to one of those directional Michigan schools. I always get it mixed up. One of them.
Well, and if you look it up, somebody that social media, Caleb Williams was offered $1 million by a financial firm that I think Charlie Batch was associated with, was offering him $1 million to go to his school for 1 year. That's ludicrous.
It's ludicrous, but see, what I can't get a handle on is that if it's, supply and demand in a free marketplace, and if a private company wants to say, it's not the school. Now, the issues I have is, number one, I don't think it should seep into the recruiting process, and it's impossible to regulate it that it doesn't. So theoretically, these schools aren't supposed to be able to say to these student athletes, well, if you come to our school, we're going to be able to do X, Y, and Z. That's supposed to be completely out of the recruiting process until they sign and enroll, and then the NIL comes. I think we all know a little bit better than that.
And that's where Saban came in with, Fisher a few weeks ago, and that's exactly what Nick Saban was saying, and he probably went about it the wrong way, but his point was, you can buy recruits, and to me, that just is outrageous, and that is not what college football should be about. And and closer to home, Arch Manning is now a Texas guy, and we'll see how much money Arch Manning makes in his college football career, and it's going to be astronomical.
And the quarterback he's going to be competing against, who hasn't played a game yet, Quinn Ewers, went to Ohio State for a year and made $1.4 million and didn't throw a pass.
That is, where is this money coming from? I mean, where are these TikTokers and college football players? And anyway, it's
so,
not.
Mike, I got to think that maybe one thing that's going to hold down the ridiculous transfers all over the place might be if my company wants to invest in Arch Manning and we're big Texas fans, well, then part of that stipulation is we're paying you as long as you're a Texas football player. So you can't leave. I would think that they would put those in the contract.
Oh, I'm sure there's no question that they're not going to be paying him if he leaves. So that's a good point, and that maybe keeps them in-house a little longer. But I don't know. I don't even have a solution. I don't even have to try to figure out a solution. I know it's a mess, and I'm not a big fan of it. But I'm one guy, and I'm certainly not going to be able to offer my opinion and have anything change. So. You're the voice of college football, so you got to be able to have a little bit of leverage in your life. No,
Nobody's told me about that.
Like you do?
Yeah, I haven't figured out where that leverage is. I'm going to work it on my behalf first. We're going to take care of me, and then I'll start dealing with these other issues out there.
There you go.
Let's get back to the fun stuff in your career because I find it interesting. I didn't know until we were on with Golden Blue Dude that you punted as well as was a place kicker, because forgive me here as a voice of college football. And, the folks that watch here would think that I can recite every statistic in the world. And I constantly remind them, no, nobody knows everything. I didn't realize that you were at West Virginia. I watched you throughout the NFL. And so then after we were on with Golden Blue Dude, I was like, how did I lose track of him? I looked you up and saw punter, place kicker, West Virginia, 2 seasons. So I thought must have went to junior college and then to the CFL. So you weren't like some big star college football kicker that made it right to the NFL.
It's crazy. My story is actually quite unique. I was drafted by Saskatchewan in, I think it was 92 or 91 even, and I had no idea. I was a junior at West Virginia and already been drafted by Saskatchewan. So I think in the draft up there, you actually get to hold their rights for 2 years. So they sometimes draft you when you're not even technically draft eligible. So I went into my senior year kicking field goals after Todd Sauerbrunn beat me out as the punter. So I figured if I'm not going to punt,
he was pretty good.
I might as well kick. So I beat out Mark Johnson, who I saw last fall. He ended up being my holder. So that's quite the story in itself. But then, I went to Saskatchewan. I was cut in Saskatchewan in 93. I signed in Toronto in 94, was cut. I signed again in Toronto in 95 and was cut. I was then signed by Hamilton the next day down the street, was cut. I was then signed in the Arena League with the Minnesota Fighting Pike in 96 and was cut. And then I played 2 years in Toronto. I was signed in Toronto, coincidentally, by the same head coach that cut me in 93 in Saskatchewan is now the head coach in Toronto in 96. And, made the team and ended up being the Canadian MVP of the Grey Cup and went 14 for 14 in 2 playoffs runs. And then you're offered jobs all over the NFL to come work out. So I had 8 workouts in the NFL. I was offered a contract and a signing bonus with the Packers to be a punter. And then I was offered a bigger signing bonus to go to Indianapolis and compete with both the punter and the kicker. So I went into training camp in 98 in Indianapolis, and I did both. I punted against Chris Gardocki, who was the punter the year before in the Pro Bowl, and I kicked against Kerry Blanchard, who was the Pro Bowl kicker the year before. Yeah. So I'm standing there going against 2 guys that had been in the Pro Bowl in 96, and this is only 98. So my work was cut out for me. But the cool thing is my signing bonus for going to Indianapolis was basically half of a CFL salary. So my mentality was, listen, if I go to Indy and I get cut, financially, I would have missed half the CFL season, but my signing bonus made up for it, and I looked at it as a no-lose situation. So it was but I led the CFL in punting, and, I was offered a deal by Green Bay. So technically, I guess I can do both.
Mike, you're bringing up names I haven't thought about for 15 or 20 years. That's awesome. I love that. Yeah. So when you were kicking in West Virginia, were you thinking, I'm good enough to be in the NFL? Or was it just a thing that I just whatever the next step is, the next step, and you just got better and better and better.
Yeah, I mean, I never at any time really, even in the CFL, I was never thinking NFL. I've said this before. I just went day to day, game to game, kick to kick. You're just rolling along in life, right? Like for me, I just happened to be an athlete who could put the ball down and put it where they were asking me to put it. So, I never, even when I've had a good couple of years in Canada, all of a sudden, it really was all of a sudden, oh my God, my agent's going, listen, you've got the Bears asking about you, the Jets, the Vikings, the Seahawks, the Colts. It was nuts. And, you go down there as a naive kid from Oakville going, oh my God, what am I getting myself into? A funny story, when I went to work out for the Jets, I was up all night the night before in the hotel, feeling like crap. I go to kick for the Jets. It's raining. I look up into the building, and Bill Parcells is sitting there watching the workout through the window, and I had an awful workout. And halfway through the workout, I looked up, and the curtains were closed. So I think Bill had seen enough of my less than stellar performance with the Jets, but obviously it ended up pretty good.
So I got to think for a lot of these guys that come into the league, that if there's not immediate success, the kicker's treated differently in a lot of ways. Like you see kickers in the NFL, if you have like a 1-for-3 day and you don't have a track record, man, you're hanging by a thread, and you might be on the waiver wire the next day on Monday, and then you're looking for another job. That you got to really establish a track record to be secure. Otherwise, these other guys are just going from team to team and trying to hang on.
Well, I just think that you can sign a kicker on Saturday and have him come in and kick on Sunday, right? Like there's no game plan, there's no playbook to learn. You just put the ball down and you make kicks, and I think they're so expendable that unless you really do have that year or 2 years where you've done well, you are 2 or 3 kicks away from being out the door. But the upside of that is, guys like Zane Gonzalez, for example, who struggled in Cleveland, and all of a sudden he has a good run in Arizona. So, you're not out of the league just because one team doesn't want you, because at some point another team's got a kicker who's struggling, and all of a sudden, even though you may have missed a few that you should have made, you still have that NFL resume that you've shown that you can make kicks in the league, and that's probably a head up on a guy that maybe just be a college guy who hasn't actually cracked into the lineup anywhere.
So, Mike, for a guy, regardless of how many kicks you made from extra point distance, that was pretty much automatic. What would that have done to you if you would have been in the league now? And it's been 4 or 5 years that they backed it up and it became a legitimate kick all of a sudden. How much would that have messed with you?
It would have, and you think to yourself, God, they miss so many extra points these days, and it's a 33-yard field goal. I mean, if you're missing a 33-yard field goal, you got problems. But my mentality was, it's just an extra point. Like for me, I was known for field goal percentage, so an extra point, you almost take it off as it's an off play. So if you drop me back to 33. It still doesn't count as a field goal miss, and I probably would have had a hard time focusing enough, because even though it's 33, it is a missable kick, where an extra point back then, you could almost just close your eyes, swing your leg, and it's going in. And that's, I think the problem is that kickers kind of take it for granted, for one, and two, to them, their whole focus is making sure you're extremely accurate kicking field goals. And my point is that maybe they just take a little bit of a mental break when it comes to an extra point, and that's where the problems come in.
Did you ever have a PAT miss that mattered?
I did not. It was funny. I'm in Canada right now, and on TSN was the 40 craziest finishes, and one of them was John Carney on that crazy extra point when New Orleans did a crazy play and we're down 7, and then
against the Panthers, I think.
Jaguars in
Jaguars.
Yeah.
Panthers. Yeah. Jaguars.
It was Saints at Jaguars. So
yeah.
The answer is no. And I missed one extra point in my career, and you'll appreciate this because of your radio background. I used to do X103, I think, in Indianapolis. And the guy that I used to go on with every week, he was like, listen, you got to throw up the X before a field goal. Cross your arms and give me the X. I was like, no, I'm not doing it. I said, I'll do it for an extra point, but I'm not doing it for a field goal. So we played the Raiders. I went out there for an extra point. I threw up the X, and the snap caught me off guard. I wasn't really paying attention. I went with the X, and I yanked the extra point, and it was the only extra point that I missed in my entire career because I was screwing around. And fortunately, we won the game, so it wasn't that big a deal. But, you'd like to have it back because missing in my world is unacceptable.
Mike, getting back to West Virginia, I got a lot of Mountaineer fans here, hopefully. Can you give us a feel for why West Virginia is special? Morgantown, what's different about West Virginia football, the environment, the crowd, the campus, the whole deal?
Well, I think one easy answer is that similar to Nebraska, it's the biggest thing in the entire state, right? There is no pro team. So when you look at the Mountaineers, it represents the entire state of West Virginia. So that's a definite advantage. I think, too, the landscape of the state is so beautiful that it's a very enticing place for you to go to school. It's always voted one of the top 2 or 3 party schools in the nation. So they certainly do enjoy having a good time. And the facilities are fantastic. So, when you put everything together, I've got a punter from Texas Tech that I coach, Austin McNamara, because I coach kickers and punters. I also have a kicker at Western Kentucky they're both All-American. So I take pride in those two that I helped them get scholarships, and now they're succeeding on Saturdays. But, even Austin McNamara tells me how crazy it is, and he gets to go to Oklahoma and Texas and all these places, and he keeps bringing up Morgantown as one of those special places. His dad goes to every game, home or away, and he's even mentioned how awesome Morgantown is. So, I took it for granted when I was there and kind of neglected it when I was in the NFL, but as you get older, you go back there and you realize what a special place it really is.
It sounded like from our conversation a couple of weeks ago that you didn't feel a lot of nerves or pressure.
Well, I mentioned this before. When the ball's going in, there really isn't a whole lot of pressure, right? Like it's as simple as, if a pitcher is going to be throwing strikes and he just feels like he's got the command of the strike zone, where's the pressure? When you're a golfer and you're going to hit that draw down the middle 320, where's the pressure? And my mentality was, if you're in my body and you're warming up, kicking field goals pregame, and you've had all this success, and it was so easy to kick the ball through the uprights. Like in practice, I always used to mess around with guys going, listen, what do you want, left half or right half? Because I just felt like the whole thing was too easy just to make it. I wanted the challenge of kicking it in the left half of the uprights or the right half of the uprights. I challenged myself in practice because to me it was so easy. So when something is so easy for you, as long as you're concentrating and doing the things you should do, the ball's going in, and that's where kind of the pressure goes away. You certainly feel the pressure. It obviously is I've talked to people recently where you feel like, I think being a field goal kicker in the National Football League is probably the most pressure-packed position in all of sports. I challenge somebody to find something that's more pressure-packed than a field goal kicker in the NFL. I mean, obviously a quarterback, but they can miss. They can throw interceptions and come back and play well. A kicker, very, very minimal room for error. So, like I said, I feel the pressure and I understand it, but at the end of the day, as soon as that ball snapped and you see it's down, I felt comfortable and I knew where it was going.
It's funny, Mike, that you size it up like that, because I always felt as though the kicker had the most pressure and a punter has the least pressure. As long as an NFL punter catches the ball and can get it off, unless he shanks it and it's awful, as long as it's 40 yards, nobody's batting an eye.
You sound like me. I have said that 100 times, that the punter is the easiest job in sports. You literally can just bang it as far as there is no target you have to hit. You can shank it off the side of your foot and have it roll out of bounds at 38 yards and nobody cares. So you're absolutely right. I think being a field goal, and people are like, oh, I have a 23-year-old son in college, and they're all, why wasn't he a kicker? I'm like, heck no, I'm not making him a kicker. Not a chance. But he does punt a little bit. So, that's the easy job, certainly.
The other thing is when you talk about the expectation and the standard of almost perfection is looking back at your career. I'm going to ask you in both directions, the highest of highs and the lowest of lows. I don't want to fill in the blank of what I'm guessing is the lowest of lows because I think you'll hit it. I think I got that one. But there were so many highs because you made so many big kicks. But was there one that was a little more special?
Well, we'll get to the Pittsburgh kick in a minute, but I had 2 field goals in a game against Denver. One was a 54-yarder with the last play of the game to tie, and then I hit a 51 in overtime to win. Those are 2 kicks that you're just like, this is unbelievable. That was one of those games that you'll always remember. I hit a 53-yarder at the buzzer to beat the Dolphins in Miami when Dan Marino was on the other side with Jimmy Johnson and Peyton Manning and Jim Mora on the other side, and you're just, as the drive, and it's funny, Edgerrin James came over to me before the drive started. He's like, listen, where do you need it? And I was like, just get it to the 35. And the crazy thing is, it's exactly where Edgerrin ran to the last play before they called for a field goal, was the 35. He's running off the field, slapping 5, and he's like, I got you. And, you're walking out there with as it turns out, Hall of Famers as coaches, Hall of Famers as quarterbacks. And the game comes down to some dude from Oakville, Ontario, Canada. And it's just one of those moments where, I banged it right down the middle and, I could have flew home by myself. So that was a big one. The game where last game of the year against Houston in Houston, I had, I think, 39 in a row. The record was 40 going into the game. So I had to make 2 to break the record. The game comes down to a game-winning field goal, and it's a 40-something yarder. And if I make the kick, we win the game, we win the division, we get a home field game in the playoffs, and then I obviously break Gary Anderson's record of 40 in a row. So that was a lot on your plate for one kick. And I remember talking to Rob Morris as the drive was going. I was telling him all this, and I was like, listen, and the city of Indianapolis gets $14 million for hosting a playoff game. That's kind of the revenue that's generated for a city that hosts a playoff game. I was like, do you want to go kick it? Just joking around. He's like, no, you go ahead. I was like, all right, I'll see you later. So, again, when you know it's going in, you can feel a little bit more comfortable about it. But, and then is the Pittsburgh kick the one you want to talk about?
That's what's in my mind. Yeah.
My therapist says it's okay to talk about it at this point. So I'm just kidding. But the crazy thing about that entire season in Indianapolis was I was awful. I was awful in practice. I was awful in pregame. I had literally zero confidence in what I was doing. It's like your golf swing. When it's off, and you don't know what the hell you're doing wrong. So, I was 50% in practice and had no idea why. I was 50% in pregame, if not worse. I had no idea why. And that Pittsburgh kick was literally the second missed kick I had in 17 games. And I have no idea how I was player of the game in Jacksonville going 4 for 4. And I was awful. I couldn't make a thing in pregame, but I guess when it came down to the game, your rhythm kicks in. But, going out for that kick in Pittsburgh, when I talked about confidence, it was the opposite. I was awful. I had no confidence. I didn't know where my head needed to be. I didn't know where I was supposed to be leaning. I was just a mess. And, I'm not surprised it didn't go in. I barely kept it inside the building. It was so far right. But, it's like when you're trying to hit a golf swing and you have no idea where to get your hands at the top of your swing. It's just hitting hope. And it wasn't one of those kicks that you certainly felt good about. But I don't want to say shit happens, but there's certainly in a career where you've played for 14 years, 13 years, you're going to have kicks you want back, and certainly that's one of them. But
Of course.
I had a great career, and I guess you can't make them all.
Absolutely. 86.5%. And you and Peyton show up at the same time in 98. I find this kind of ironic. This all comes together. The Colts have been awful for 6-7 years, something in that range. You guys show up, have one bad season, and then flip the switch, 13-3. Edgerrin James wasn't there in 98. He was still at the U, and then he shows up. He's great, and you guys are suddenly one of the best teams in the NFL.
Well, you're right.
And you probably, I'm guessing, Mike, not to interrupt you probably weren't really too concerned about all that since you're just trying to make an NFL team at that point.
Yeah, I certainly was. I had great seats for the Marvin, Peyton, Edgerrin show. There was the Troy Aikman, Emmitt Smith, Michael Irvin threesome, and everybody talked about the Colts three. That was the next big three, and they certainly were. Obviously, when Edgerrin came in and ran for, I don't know what it was. He ran for 1,800 yards as a rookie and was just blazing. And obviously Marvin is a Hall of Famer, and Peyton. And I had good seats, but you're right. I when the offense is going down the field, I'm kicking into the net, making sure that I've hit the last one good, and I'm ready to make a field goal if it's time for a field goal. So as much as I watched the offense, I certainly wasn't just a fan. I was the guy who better make it if it's fourth down.
Mike, before we let you enjoy your holiday weekend here, we'd like to get everybody on board with your business venture here, which is really exciting and interesting. Slap It On. Tell us what that's all about.
Well, I don't like to use the F word, but Fathead was the company that gave me kind of the thought about doing vinyl decals. I wanted to do my son when he was in the 8th grade. So that's kind of where it started. And it has since grown into a technology marketing kind of company where you can scan our product with our app and video content comes up and you can change it in and out on a daily basis. It's real time. The funny thing is that I got the introduction from Nancy Kerrigan's husband. So I was in Mexico at a golf event and met him, and we had been talking since then. And he's like, "Hey, you need to talk to this technology company." So we turned a decal into a come to life kind of image on your phone or your laptop. Slap it on your phone, slap it on your laptop, slap it on your car, slap it on your wall. So it's really cool. We're just coming out with our website in the next week. We've got a lot of really good stuff coming, and hopefully, you and I are going to be doing some stuff together too. So it's a very cool product. It's just on the cusp of everybody absolutely knowing what a Slap It On is.
That is phenomenal. And it's a great name. Did you come up with the name? Can you take credit for that?
I do, yes. And a hand is the decal, is the logo. So the hand is the brand, Mark. So we want to make sure everybody knows. I always joke that you know what a swoosh is. You're going to know what the hand is. That if you see the hand, it's part of that Slap It On brand that Vanderjagt guy came up with.
Yeah, the marketing's huge, and if you can come up with a great name, and that's just a quick, catchy, bam, slap it on.
Absolutely.
Voice of College Football, I didn't come up with that. People told me that, and it took me like 100 people to tell me that before. Like my friends were like, "Why don't you use that?"
There you go.
Oh yeah, I guess that would sound good. Absolutely. Yeah, I'm not real bright.
No, that's okay. if you want to show it off, slap it on. That's how we roll. So it's exciting stuff. Appreciate it.
Mike Vanderjagt, West Virginia, Colts, Cowboys, NFL great. Mike, we appreciate you stopping by. You have a great weekend, and hopefully we'll see you soon.
Absolutely, Mark. Thanks, brother.